All right, so folks, what you're about to see here are conversations with my board members. Board members, I mean, it's a loose term that I use because of Patreon. So, about a year ago, I realized like, some of these other UA YouTubers are in like, some things are bad things are happening to their YouTube channels. What do we have to do? So I went to Patreon and I said, okay, just come over here for free. But I also set up tiers just in case, like if something goes wrong with YouTube, maybe I can, still have some stability here. I've done that again now with Spotify, where what I've done is I've created an audio only version of this that's on Spotify. Now, the people that are here are what we call board members in a tier. It's only on Patreon, and so there's like students and colleagues and students, undergrad students, graduate students, colleagues, and then board members. Board members are in this top tier, and because they have actually gone out of their way to support me like they have, I want to hear what they have to say. And not just like for a shady deal, but like they've already shown me that they care about this and they want to be involved and right. So for that reason, it's like kind of like Polymarket, right? I believe what Polymarket or Predicted says with some sustainability because people are like stepping up. Okay, so it's the same kind of thing. Okay, so I have some questions for you, and we're going to go through a number of topics here. And this is the same introduction that you'll see in some of the other in different topics as we go through this. So if it sounds repetitive, maybe it is. So I have a half dozen or so topics that we're going to go through. So here's our first topic. Our first topic is a ceasefire. What do you think is going to happen here? I myself, I know what I think. I am curious because if you're here in this room, you're somebody who's really connected. So how do you think this will play out?
Nothing will happen. Like
Nothing will
no
happen.
ceasefire, no peace, nothing will happen.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
Kevin?
I agree with that. I just can't see the Russians ever even temporarily ceasing their operations. I think that in their mind they have forward momentum, and they whether it's true or not, they seem to genuinely believe that any ceasefire is going to be an opportunity for the U.S. to just help Ukraine even more, even if that's not going to be the U.S.'s intention. So I don't see there really ever being a ceasefire.
Okay, Kevin?
Yeah, I come at it from the point of view that any ceasefire, first and foremost, Ukraine has got to understand what damage that might do to it, in that Putin will repair, replenish, and reposition under those circumstances. In my years in combat arms from 1967 to 1996, I understand what an enemy does in moments of pause. They regroup, but they aren't giving up. So
Sure.
I don't hold with, we have not arrived, having done peacekeeping on ceasefires. Both sides have to be exhausted, near broken, and so bloodied and battered that they do not want to fight. Ukraine is not in that position yet.
Okay. Randolph or David?
It's in my mind, it's just a gift to Putin. I see any value in a ceasefire for Ukraine.
Okay. David, you have any thoughts?
Well, I think I saw you talking about it where when you researched the average ceasefire lasted 1 to 3 days with the Russians. And ceasefire does no good because the Russians will not respect that ceasefire.
Well, the last was 1 to 3 hours. So this was a record. I mean, that was pretty impressive even for them. So yeah, I just don't see it actually going anywhere. Tell me about Witkoff. What do you as you watch that Witkoff, the funniest comment Zelensky said, he's probably a good real estate developer.
So there is
what do you make of that? Like when you see this, how are you processing that?
so there is a video shared by channel Combat Veteran Reacts. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the author of the channel. He's obviously a veteran. He was describing that, and I fully agree with it, as someone non-professional trying to play against the professional basketball team. So
Wow.
like you invite, some of your cousin, like, oh, like my cousin, he shoot hoops like after his shift,
Yeah.
sometimes, so let's go and play against like Lavrov and so on.
You can't see the goosebumps, but that's why you guys are here, because we get these kind of ahas, right? I mean, that's really a great analogy of what's going on with Witkoff. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Right. But essentially, on top of it, like you can tell that his unsavory character, just how easily, he repeats a Kremlin's propaganda. And I don't think he doesn't look like, like complete imbecile, just to actually believe it. So that means, he repeats it intentionally, which means, he's a scumbag. I'm sorry, like I will try to tone down
Yeah,
my
yeah.
rhetoric.
You're reining it in already. You're already better than your potty mouth last time.
Thank you. So for that means, that he has some motivation to behave like that. So usually when a smart person does something as stupid as he did in an interview with Carlson, that means money or
That's
power.
interesting.
So like I wouldn't go past, that he has personal motivation in relaunching Nord Stream 2. Somehow he's connected in that deal, like, and he has, some motivation to behave the way he does.
So I'm not going to say that until I can prove it, but now I know what to look for. Now, my first thought was that he's a Trump loyalist, and that's the only reason he's there, because they're buddies, and Trump really trusts him. But yeah, it'd be interesting to look for anything where he's connected to some kind of future deal. Okay, anybody else?
My pet name for him is Witless. I can't imagine him going to meet with Trump and being so ill prepared, because Trump is a man with a complete command of what's going on. And to show up and, according to the reports, he didn't even know what oblasts were involved, were at stake. How can you not prepare for a meeting with Vladimir Putin?
Okay, yeah, you said Trump the first time, and then you said Putin the second
I'm
time. So you
sorry.
meant Putin. You misspoke. Okay, gotcha.
There's a similarity there. I
Yeah.
get confused.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Yeah, that does seem odd that he wouldn't have been prepped and understand that. Okay, anybody else?
I agree with the amateur point and the fact that one's playing the game as a Trump loyalist, hoping to reflect Trump wishes, but then being blindsided by a 2 a.m. bathroom Trump moment in which his wishes and directions change. And all of a sudden you're out of position trying to do something that, and you are no longer reflecting the thought of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I just look at the entire administration trying to support Trump as being a group of players out on the playing surface and at risk for the coach changing his mind at any moment back on the.
Well, that's my zigzag theory of what Trump is, but he hasn't really zagged. He's only zigged.
No,
Like so.
to that end, you're still caught with trying to drive the bus towards a perception of what Trump wants.
Yeah.
And right now, it appears to be some sort of accommodation that benefits Putin and totally kneecaps Ukraine.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately what it appears to be. And look, I've been looking for anything that will show us that Trump's doing the right thing. And if I don't see it, like there's some people that just outright hate Trump. I'm trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, right? Is including Trump, and I'm just not seeing the evidence that he's doing things that are in favor of Ukraine in any meaningful way. So, David or Tom?
I agree. I mean, I'm really I just have a healthy agnosticism on how the whole negotiations process is going to go with Witkoff and anyone that's going to be involved. I think you said it correctly earlier that probably the defining characteristic of him is that he's a loyalist to Trump. I don't know that there's any ideology present there, but I really just remain agnostic.
Yep. Okay. So, David, you have something? If not, we'll move on to the next half of this.
Not really. I just think the Ukrainians should be negotiating with somebody else besides the US.
Okay, that leads us. Well, besides the U.S., you threw me here. I was going to say it leads us right into Keith Kellogg. Like, what happened to him, and how is he demoted? And like, he's like the guy that's most pro-Ukraine. But then you actually brought us to a different nuance there. But I still want to talk about Keith Kellogg. What happened to that? How do you process that? Go ahead, Kevin.
My understanding is that he's fluent in Russian,
Uh-huh.
has a strong military background,
Mm-hmm.
is obviously aware of the challenges of dealing with Russia, and as a result, he was perceived as a threat and a menace by Putin. Putin wanted him off the table, and that was accommodated.
So shouldn't the Ukrainians be able to then say, we want Witkoff off the table? I mean, that seems like a fairsy, right?
If only, but
Yeah.
that's just not, again, from, if you go with your zigzag theory, and Trump's only going in one direction, and that is what enables me to accomplish what do I want to accomplish, that somehow favors Putin and gets Putin to be more compliant with me, Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge remains that Zelensky and a lot of the other allies supporting Ukraine have to hold and constantly reject any path that puts Ukraine at greater risk than it already is. There's
So my zigzag was just saying, here's how you can diagnostically tell. I'm not saying he's going to zig and then he's going to zag. I say he's capable of, and watch what he does. If he only zigs, then that's telling you one thing. And if he zigs and then zags and then zigs and then zags, that tells you something different. I'm not saying he will necessarily. I'm saying this is how he could operate. So
he could if he was that kind of player, but that's not what the history of Putin and Trump in the first Trump administration in then neutral Helsinki.
mhm.
I'm sorry, but everything that was relevant to the United States, Trump stood on stage with Putin and sold out his entire U.S. intelligence apparatus and core.
So that's an interesting nuance there, because what he did with Trump in the, what Trump did with Putin in the past is that what he's done with other issues is zigging and zagging and zigging and zag. So you're seeing a more consistent zigging only with Trump with Putin.
I
But he is capable of doing that because he really has no ideological core, except he really wants to be Putin's buddy, it seems.
He might at the last minute if he sees some massive disaster and it hits him between the eyes, or somebody else hits Trump between the eyes and says, you've got to change, because the kind of political loss that you're about to experience
Mm-hmm.
because of the course you're holding is going to be so massive, it's going to cost you a major collapse in the Senate or in with the representatives. I just like that's where I'm at.
Okay. Anyone else? Tom,
so
are you hiding for OPSEC or something? Or there
I
you
am
are.
actually on a military base, but no, no. I'm not for a sec. No, I would say I'm a little more pessimistic about that. I don't see any course correction for the Trump administration on this. I don't think there's any, it's a bleak picture, but I just can't. I really don't think there's anything that could happen with Ukraine, Russia, and the United States that could cause a political disaster for Trump. I mean, just people don't typically vote on foreign policy things, let alone in a midterm elections. I don't think there's really any scenario where there's a Republican Party revolt for anything that happens. The only mild optimism I have for the potential for any kind of ceasefire or anything like that is that I think Trump more than anything just wants to be the guy who got a ceasefire. No matter
Right.
it doesn't matter if it has any sort of legs to it or anything like that. If he can hold up a piece of paper and say, I did it, I got it done, then they might just look to close the books on that and move to something else. And it doesn't matter if in 3 months from now the Russians resume, they'll say that the Ukrainians started it. Enough of the kind of right-wing pundits will swallow that and parrot it, and then it won't matter. It'll be on the back shelf for the Trump administration.
So,
I think
so
little-
you're probably right. I think only Trump actually wants the ceasefire. I
Right.
don't think that Ukraine wants it. I don't think that Russia wants it. They both want to keep fighting. Yes, Zelensky wants it to be over, but he doesn't want it over on the wrong terms.
Right.
Alex, you look like you're biting at the chomping at the bit to say something.
So, like, since we brought ceasefire back in the topic of Kellogg, some things that I wanted to say when we're talking about ceasefire, Putin doesn't want ceasefire, that's for sure, but he cannot afford ceasefire. And the reason for it, I actually have been in Russia in the 90s. It was really, really bad. And one of the reasons why it was a lot of people who returned from Afghan after Soviet Union was fighting there, and they were core for all the criminal cases that were happening there. There were thugs everywhere, and they were organized. They were professional killers, and they were doing what they were taught to do. In Afghan, almost no one compared to their overall population of, back Soviet Union was. It was almost nothing, and the country was crumbling after this. Right now, the amount of people who are criminals, they are war criminals, literally, who are taught to kill, they will have nothing to do back at home. Economy is in ruins. They will be thugs. They will tear the country apart. Putin cannot afford to let them go back. So at the best case scenario, he will keep them on occupied territories, meaning for Russia, best case. Like, I'm not saying that's good for Ukraine or good for us here or whatever. For Russia, best case scenarios, he will always keep them on occupied territory in like some camps or whatever, but he cannot do that. It's just like not enough organization to make it happen. So if there is a ceasefire, he will immediately invade Balkans, in particular, or Kazakhstan or somewhere else, simply because he cannot, he needs a vector, just like to apply that force. Otherwise, they will apply this vector to him.
Let alone the economic destabilization that'll happen by trying to go back to a civilian normal economy. There's problems there. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this with our audience, and we'll see some of these out here shortly.
Well, it was a pleasure. Looking forward to nice to meet everybody who's come in new. Alex, good to see you again. Thanks, Professor.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.